Alright, we're back here in our script playground for more about Python. In this lesson we're going to cover some of the Python built-in data types. So we've already seen in the previous lesson the scalar data types. So we have integers and floating points and strings. So those are all scalar data types. The main point of this lesson is to talk about some of the data structures that Python includes. And the first one to talk about is the list. So to create a new list, you use this square brackets. So I could say, 4, 87, hello. And this creates a new list. And if I run it, let's print it out first. You'll see that I've got a list here. So what is a list? A list is just a series of objects in a specific order. And a list can be altered. So I can append new things onto my list X. So I could say x.append. So the list itself is an object and has methods on it. Append is just one of the methods on the list object in Python. And I could append, let's say, 2.5, and we'll print x again and take a look at it. And now you see my list has been extended by 1. You can also check the length of a list using the built-in len function. Len will check the length of pretty much anything. So right now the length of our list x is 4. It's also worth mentioning that a list can also contain another list. So I could say x.append and then start a new list right in here and say 1, 2, 3. And now you can see that x has X has 487, hello, 2.5, and then a list, 1, 2, 3. So it's a sequence of objects. The objects can be any type. They don't have to be scalar types. They can be other lists. Lists are very powerful. And lists have all sorts of really interesting abilities in Python. If you're interested in learning more, it's a little bit outside the scope of this introductory video, but you might want to look up list slicing and list comprehensions. They're very powerful techniques in Python. Well, we're going to move on here and talk about the tuple. The tuple is another kind of sequence objects in Python. So I'm just going to go ahead and say y is equal to, and now the difference here you'll notice is that I don't start it with a square bracket. I'm just going to go ahead and start putting things in a comma separated list. So we'll say 1, 2, 3. And if I run this, if I run it without typing it incorrectly, you'll see that y looks kind of like a list, except that it's got parentheses around it instead of square brackets, and that's the syntactical difference between a list and a tuple. A tuple is a sequence that's very similar to a list, except that it's immutable. And tuples are used a lot in Python for what's called an unpacking assignment. So, for example, if I had y equals 1, 2, 3 like this, I could say a comma b comma c is equal to y, and now it's going to unpack the 3 values inside of y into these 3 variables. And this might seem kind of silly in this example, but this is mostly used for returning multiple things from a function so that you can unpack them into multiple variables. It turns out to be pretty handy. And the last data structure we're going to talk about in this lesson is the dictionary. And dictionaries are very important, especially with use in Ignition. We use them quite a bit in our API. So a dictionary is a data structure that you start with a squiggly bracket. So I'm going to open up a squiggly brace there, and then instead of just typing in items in a comma separated list like you would with a list or a tuple, a dictionary is also known as a map. It holds key value pairs, and so you need you need your items to all be in pairs. So I could say A, and then you use a colon operator is 1, and then you use a comma, and you can say B colon 2, and hello maps to world. And what this does is it creates a name value pair mapping. And so it's mapping the key of A to a value of 1, key B, value 2, key hello, value world. And what you can do with this dictionary is pull the values out of it by referencing the key. So I could say print D, and then you use a square bracket notation as a subscript, and you put in one of the keys. So I'm going to say D hello, and that's going to print out world. All right, that was a pretty brief introduction to the main data structures in Python. If you're interested in learning more, I strongly suggest you check out the free Python tutorial. Chapter 5 has a whole section on lists and tuples and dictionaries and how to iterate over the values inside of them and a bunch of interesting information like that.